I just made $10,000 in the past 48 hours, and in this video, I do want to break down the number one thing that I have realized which separated me and the people that make it from the people that don't and just stay at zero like you probably have been for a long time. I'm not making this video to brag or anything. I do genuinely have a lot of knowledge within this space. I have been making money for a long time, so it doesn't affect me as it would for most people just making their first 10,000. However, with that being said, making 10,000 in 48 hours is a lot more than your average person. If I were to continue down that path for a whole month, we would have made over $300,000. So, with that being said, the number one thing that is separating people who make it and people who don't, and I know this is going to sound cliche, but don't click off the video just yet because I do have a different way of looking at it, and you have to make sure to watch the entire thing. Apply the actionable steps that I will teach you later in the video. Don't just click off. That's the first thing. But besides the point, the number one thing that basically separates people in that regard is what you do when nobody's watching. And like I said, I know it sounds corny, you've probably heard it before, whatever, but the way I look at it is that it is genuinely easier to make money and to do work and then not doing anything, even though it doesn't seem that way. And the reason why is because when you work a 9 to 5 or when you do any of these things, it's very easy to put the work in because you have a boss over your head. You have somebody who's going to force you to work. You have a place to show, people are watching you, so on and so on. However, when nobody's watching and when nobody's forcing you to do any sort of work or when nobody's forcing you to do anything, you literally have to sit in your own chair and put the work in just because you said you had to, even though you don't really feel like it. That is the hardest shit ever, especially when you do not feel like doing the work, yet you still show up and do so. That is the main thing that separates somebody who makes it with somebody who doesn't. And my whole take on this is that obviously you've kind of heard all motivation doesn't matter, discipline is the thing that matters, and that is true. However, you do need a little bit of motivation to get the ball rolling. But imagine when you're working a 9 to 5 or when you're working a job or whatever, you have somebody behind your shoulder who's looking over you, forcing you to work, and basically just like, yeah, have this done by XYZ time, right? If you start treating your business and your own ventures or whatever that you're doing in the same way, you will get shit done. However, you're not getting shit done because nobody's forcing you to do something. So put yourself in a position where somebody actually is forcing you to do something. That means that you have to get uncomfortable, put yourself in a bad spot, get in an uncomfortable position, do these hard things so that you will force yourself to do shit. Because if you genuinely don't even have to do it, yet you still show up for whatever reason, there's gonna be times when you really don't feel like it and you still don't do it. So you basically have to force yourself to get shit done in whatever ways that you can, especially if this is something that you're struggling with already. I have a good friend of mine, his name is Mario. He basically owns 3 houses outright, no loans, no nothing, he's bought them all. What he does is he literally pays himself rent. What I mean by this is that he has an accountant that basically collects a check from him every single month, which is his own rent, even though he owns the house. So he pays that to his accountant, and then the accountant uses that money in whatever way terms, whether it's saving or whatever. And he kind of says, oh no, I have to pay my own rent, just to kind of keep rent due, because rent is always due, and he shows up and has to put the work in to make that amount of money so he can pay himself rent, even though he owns the house and doesn't even have to pay rent, right? So that is kind of just things you can do. That is just an example of what I mean with putting yourself in a bad spot. Another great example is if you start posting on social media and people are genuinely relying on you for information, you have a duty to show up to those people even though you don't feel like it, right? So putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, whether that be financially, let's say you lock up 80% of your money, so you're basically like in a financially fucked situation if you don't make shit happen, even though you actually have money. If you put yourself in a bad spot like that, you're forcing yourself to fucking get shit done, otherwise you're gonna be broke again. So do whatever you can to put yourself in an uncomfortable position to get shit done. So what separates people from making it and people who don't is not necessarily that you put yourself in a bad spot and people that make it are in a bad position or whatever, but what separates the people is that the people that make it, they get shit done even though they don't feel like it. And I know that sounds way easier than it actually is, because when you have a bunch of shit, why would you still need to show up and get shit done? It's to move the needle forward, right? Like I told you, for my sake, I don't necessarily feel a lot from making $10,000 in 48 hours, as I already have been making money for a while. However, my main thing is like, okay, I have just made $10,000 in 48 hours. Rent is due. I have to get shit done. But for most people, they would have been like, oh shit, I just made 10,000 in 48 hours. I don't have to do shit anymore. Like, I don't have to work another day for the rest of the month if I don't want to, right? It's easy to get comfortable in that position. But like I was about to say with my case, I'm like, no, we need to move the needle forward. We need to make things happen. How far can we go? What's going to drive that forward? Well, it's going to be being in an uncomfortable position. It's acting like you do not have any of the money that you just made. There's a bunch of different ways to go on it. I know I'm kind of on a rant and just rambling at this point, but I really just wanted to make this point super, super clear, because you have to understand that the people that do, and I know that you would probably say, sorry for just like jumping off topic, but you'd probably say, but if you make 10,000 in 48 hours, you've made it, right? Sure, to some extent, but it all depends on what you want to do and what you want to achieve, and you'll realize that once you actually make it, there's way more to the game than what you thought. However, the whole point of this video is obviously for people that the people that want to make it, right? That have been struggling for a while. You think you put the work in, yet you still don't see results, so on and so on. Understand that if you're not putting the work in when nobody's watching, then it does not matter what you do when somebody is. Because the work that you put in when everybody's watching, it's easy to do that. You have to do it. However, when you sit there 10 p.m., nobody's forcing you to work, yet you know you got shit to do. You have things you need to record. You have stuff you need to make, blah, 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 blah. And you don't do it, there's somebody else out there who will. So if you don't, they will be ahead of you. And that's just the simple truth. You will see people that put a lot of work in, and then you'll see people who you think never really do put any work in, yet when nobody's watching, all they do is fucking work. I know a lot of these guys that you see on social media, online, whatever, and all of them, they have a bunch of views, have a lifestyle and so on, yet nobody's actually seeing what they do when the cameras are off. And I know a lot of them, so I know what they do when the cameras are off. And what they do is that they work even harder than what you see on camera. It's pretty crazy, but they really do, because they have nothing else to do. Put yourself in a position where all you can do is just fucking show up and work. There's no other way around it. You have to put yourself in a bad spot. You have to force yourself to do shit. If you don't, somebody else will. It is as simple as that. I hope this helps. Sorry for going on a tangent. If you want to learn how to make your own AI agency, you can apply for mentoring down below. Besides that, catch you guys next time. Take care.